Welcome to another segment of our Around Town series with BPTV. And this is going to be one a little bit different than what you might be used to with I'm Done. This show is all about EV hardware. And EV hardware, as you know, is really special in my heart because this is where I have worked for the last 40 years. We're going to start this series by talking to Mrs. Evie. Mrs. Evie and her husband, Ed, opened up this store almost 62 years ago now. And we're going to hear all about some of the early days, some of the stories and so forth with Pat. And then we're going to be talking to some of our customers, some of our contractors, some of our commercial industrial customers down in the city, along with people that just come into the store, along with our staff. So enjoy learning all about what makes EV hardware so special, what made it special 60-some years ago, and what makes it special today. So I hope you really enjoy this segment. I'm thoroughly enjoying reminiscing about the past and the potential for the future and everything in between about EV True Value Hardware in Bethel Park. So I hope you enjoy our segment. Pat, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. This is, I just want to talk to you about the history of EV hardware. Get your thoughts on what it was like to be in the hardware business 60 years ago, and tell us a little bit about how you met Ed and how you guys decided to open up a hardware store. And can you start us out at the beginning of this journey that we're 60 years into now?
Well, I didn't realize we were going back to when I met my husband, but I can certainly do that.
No, just like a little bit of history of you and your family.
My husband took a job when he was just out of college with my father's business. He was their office manager. And my father invited employees, a few at a time, to come to our home at Christmas. And we actually met in my living room. And we sang Christmas songs around the piano. My sister played the piano. Shortly after that, I guess Ed Evie asked my father's permission to date me because he was 7 years older than me, and I guess he felt he needed to have my dad's approval. So that was the beginning. We dated for about 3 years because I was only 17 when we met. And at age 20, almost 21, we were married. We went on our honeymoon. Now, Ed had, of course, previously gone to college, and he had studied economics and business. And he learned at that time that hardware was the business least likely to fail. And he wanted to go into business for himself. He wanted to do it in his home community of what was then called Library and now is Bethel Park. And so when we went on our honeymoon and came back and spent the next month and a half opening and unpacking boxes from a huge trailer truck because all of our stock came from one hardware supplier in Louisville, Kentucky. And it took us a long time to get ready, but eventually we had our grand opening and introduced ourselves to the community. Now I'm happy to say that a lot of folks already knew Ed because he had lived in Bethel for a long time. But we had this grand opening and we had some specials and a few people came, not a lot, but gradually the store became better known. And it was just he and I in the beginning. We couldn't afford outside help. But gradually, as the business grew, we were able to afford outside help. And I worked in the store for the first 5 years. Then we began our family. And so I did some things at home, like making up deposits and things like that. And helped to some extent, but not to the extent that I did in the beginning.
So where did the store first start?
It started on Brightwood Road, very close to the location that Bethel Bakery is now in. On one side of us was a meat market, Fraker's, and on the other side was nothing. We were there for 3 years and then felt the need to expand. So we invited all of our friends to help us move, because moving a hardware store is no small task. They all came. They helped us pack and unpack the supplies, and we moved out to Route 88, Library Road, at the intersection of Library Road and Logan Road. There was a grocery store there at that time called Loblaws, which subsequently closed and became a Foodland. That particular location also became too small, and so our landlady built for us a building that you presently occupy. And we had to move again. We had to invite our friends again, and they all came through and helped us stock the new store, and we were able to carry many more supplies at that time than we did in the beginning.
So how the very first store, do you remember how big it was? Was it a couple thousand square feet? Or?
I don't remember the exact dimensions, but it was very small. Okay. And we couldn't carry much. When people would come in and ask for something that we didn't have, we always ordered one for them and one for stock. And sometimes we didn't even know how to use these things that we were selling, and we learned a lot from our salesmen. One in particular would come in with a catalog this thick and would explain to us what the products that we were ordering or looking into, how they were used.
Do you remember the first supplier you had, the name of the company? Or
Belknap.
Belknap, okay. Do you remember your first sales
Oh,
people?
yes.
Or?
Yes, I do. Herb Martindale is now deceased. But all of those early salesmen became good friends. And I think they talked about us somewhat, because they talked about this young couple who had no experience in hardware, but they seemed to be doing okay.
So what was your first thought when Ed came to you and told you that he wanted to open a hardware store?
Well, I always knew that he wanted his own business, but originally he was talking about men's clothing.
Okay.
And so hardware was a little surprise for me. But when I learned the reasoning behind it, it made sense. And I must say that Ed's father was very helpful. He remortgaged his home and loaned us the money to open the store. Otherwise, we couldn't have done it.
So what was the name of the company that your dad had that Mr. Evie worked for that you...
Well, my dad was a partner in the Bamer Heating Company, which is still in existence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you work for your dad also at Bamer? Or?
Well, during the summer breaks, I would run the switchboard that they had at that time, and that Ed was working there also, and you know, the relationship just developed. I went away to college for 2 years, and he would come to see me at Westminster College in New Wilmington, and those were happy days. But I was anxious, and he was anxious for us to get married. So after 2 years, I left college, came home, worked 1 additional year to save money, and we were married in 1953, and that's the year that the store opened.
Okay. So how long after you got married did the store open?
It was about a month and a half.
A month and a half. Now, did you live in Bethel Park when you opened the store?
No, when we opened the store, we actually lived in Prospect Park. And made the trip every day to Bethel. And that got very inconvenient, especially at mealtime. So we found an apartment on Brightwood Road just a few doors up from where the hardware store was located, the first store. And I would go home, cook dinner and eat, go back to the store, then Ed would leave, go home, eat dinner and come back. And our hours in those days were 9 o'clock till about 5:30.
Okay. How many days a week? 5 days a week?
6 days a week.
6
we
days
were
a
not
week.
open on Sundays.
Okay.
That's another story in itself. Ed resisted opening the hardware store on Sundays.
Yeah, I remember.
Yes, and he would get many phone calls at home. My water heater broke, I need help with this, with that. And he would be finding himself going down to the store so much that he decided, this is crazy. We need to be open on Sundays.
I think we started opening in the mid-70s. Mid-70s, I think, is when we started open on Sundays there.
And what was the year when you started, Andy?
I started in 1973. I was actually 13 years old. And being one of 10 children, and all of my siblings, I'm one of the younger ones. I'm 7 out of 10. And so all the older ones had already worked for you and Mr. Evie. So Mr. Evie gave in. When I was 13, he finally just gave in. I kept asking him. He told me that I was asking him for a job from the time I started walking. I was 5, 6 years old, and I was still asking him for a job. And he gave in at 13 and just had me dusting shelves. I think I was more 15 when he let me really start doing things other than dusting shelves and cleaning toilets. I was about 15 there, but it was 73 is when I think he gave me my first dollar or something from cleaning shelves for an hour while I was waiting for my brothers to finish their shift of working or something, and then we would walk home.
So were you there when we made the first move?
No,
Okay.
I wasn't. My recollection is always in the current building we have.
Oh, really?
I don't remember the other move up.
There were two,
Right, I remember Carl Fletcher and Walt Moorhead and Bill Dodds and some of the old staff telling me stories, because I worked with all of them still in my early years, and telling me the stories of moving and caring. And one of my favorite was when Walt said that he was moving. It was one of his first days on the job, and he had 4 quarts of paint in one arm and 4 quarts of paint in the other arm, and he's carrying them up because he had only moved 4 buildings up from the Logan Road until we are now, and he tripped on the way up and lost all 8 quarts of paint on the way up, and he said that was one of his first days, and he thought it was going to be his last day, but little did he know that he was going to be there a good 30-some years.
And Walt was very handy at repairing things.
Yes.
People would bring their lawnmowers in for service and other equipment that he was able to repair.
Which is now a very big part of our business, is the mower repairs and so forth. But I remember some of your early customers who were still customers when I started there, 20-some years after you opened.
My name is Pat Getty.
Okay, and Pat Getty, you've been a resident of Bethel Park and a customer of Evie Hardware for forever.
Since 1957.
Okay, 1957. So when you moved to Bethel, you started shopping at the hardware store?
Absolutely, with Ed Evie.
Okay. What could you tell us about your memories of Ed Evie?
Wonderful person. Like I said, one thing stands out very much in my mind. When my daughter got married in 1983, I wanted to get her something. She had bought a home, and I wanted to get her a home, something for her home. So guess what? I got her, she wanted a lawnmower. So we come down naturally to Ed Evie, and we got the lawnmower. But I couldn't afford the payment all one time. So I went back and I said to Ed, he said, what's the problem? And I said, hey Ed, I can't afford to pay this off within 30 days. And he said, I don't care.
The store has been, to me, a second home, and it's just a great place to go, a great place to buy stuff. If you need things, this is a service store that is based on service, not on the number of customers you can get in the door and the number of things he can sell. It's based on service. When you need something, this is the store where they'll go back all over the place to find you stuff, especially if you have something that's broke or something that needs to be taken care of. They go way beyond, and that's the one thing I love about the store. I always tell a lot of my friends who are other contractors that you got to go try Evie's, because they just go backward. They go over backwards to help you out. They'll go the long mile to help get things.
Do you remember some of your first employees?
Well, the very first one was Bill Dodds.
Was Bill Dodds? Okay. And he later opened up Bethel Park Fix-It Shop.
Right.
When he
Right.
left working for you
Right.
and Mr. Evie.
Hmm.
So, tell me, after you started your family, you have 2 children.
We do. We had a son, Bruce,
Okay.
who was not terribly interested in taking over the business, probably from seeing how much his dad worked, and what long hours, and what you know very well, Andy, the time that it takes to run a business. So he went to college and then went into the corporate world and worked for several Fortune 500 companies in many parts of the country. He's currently living in Vermont, loves Vermont, except this time of year, and when they are buried in snow. But he has tried several different jobs, one of which was a nonprofit organization where he did a lot of teaching and lecturing about plants and birds and animal life in Vermont to school children, to civic groups and other organizations. He loved that work, but saw the handwriting on the wall that the nonprofit organization was declining in its funding and felt that he needed to look for something else. So he is currently back in manufacturing again, moved to the opposite side of Vermont. He's now on the eastern part of Vermont instead of close to Albany, New York on the west. He is in quality control for an organization that makes optical equipment for telescopes, very specialized manufacturing, and he's liking that. And my daughter, Jill,
Okay.
is 3 years younger than her brother. She is my blessing in life because she's still local. She went to Robert Morris College and is still at the company where they helped her find work 30 years ago, which is an income tax and accounting firm. So this time of year, I see very little of Jill, but we talk every day on the phone. And she's a wonderful daughter. She has a wonderful son, who you will remember, Andy, and know. His name is Kevin. Kevin worked at Evie Hardware, and they often refer to that place as Evie University, because so many young kids, not real young, but of employment age, come there with little in the way of people skills and not a whole lot of knowledge about hardware. And you and others of your staff helped develop those young men, and Kevin was one of them. Kevin now is serving in the U.S. Navy. He is currently aboard a nuclear submarine, has had 2 years of training for that, and his job on the sub is to monitor the radiation on the reactor. And he told me recently, Grandma, the reactor is what guides the direction of the ship. And I jokingly said to him, then you're the captain. He said, no.
No.
But I'm very proud of him and what he's accomplished.
As you should be.
And have grandchildren all over the country that I rarely see.
Now, I remember being in high school. I had the pleasure of working with both Bruce and Jill, and it was a fun time. How young were they when they actually started going to the store to help out at all?
Well, I think Bruce was 15 or 16. I don't remember Jill working in the store.
Well,
What did she do?
Jill would more helped her dad with book work.
Okay.
So she'd come down and she'd be in the office. She wouldn't be out on
Okay.
the sales floor, but she helped do
Well, that's
statements and she helped do payroll. And,
Right. That makes sense,
some of
because
the-
that's
some of
her
the
forte.
often in banking and stuff like that
Right.
is when I would see Jill down the
Okay.
store. She was never on the sales floor to speak of, but
Right.
she still spent enough time there. But it over the years, you are right. We do have, and we still do, employ dozens of young men and women. I know that in the beginning, though, it was funny that Jill, yourself, and Cindy Treese were probably the only women that worked at the store, and now we have probably 25% of our staff is made up of women, young ladies, and
That's great.
It's quite a difference the way society and everything changes
Well-
with it. But I know when I started there, other than having some skills that my brothers or my dad would teach me, as far as doing any roofing work or plumbing work or change water heaters or so forth, a lot of the knowledge that I have came from Mr. Evie and Bill Dodds and Walt Moorhead and the staff, the older staff that was there, and then working at the store part-time. I also worked with some builders part-time, especially during the summer, because I never liked sitting still, so I always like keeping busy. So Mr. Evie would only give me during the summer 30 to 40 hours a week, and I like working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, so I would work with builders putting up roofs and foundations
And that gave the
cement
store
work, and
good
that's,
entree to those companies.
to those companies and everything. And the early years were a lot of fun learning, and even from the first day that I think it was Tommy Alsop, if I remember right, one of the first days I was there, and I came all eager and ready to go, and okay, I'm gonna fix everything and change everything. And he handed me a mop and a bucket, and he says, "Let me show you where you're starting." And but you learn by doing, and you can't be afraid of the work. But we love having the young men and women who work for us now, and seeing them mature and the knowledge and so forth that they take.
It's kind of fun to see teaching the employees here when they start learning about electrical and plumbing, especially things they see every day at their house. And you're the one that teaches them how a light switch works. It doesn't just flip a switch, turn the lights on, and all the details behind it, going back to the breaker box, and then seeing them help customers and relaying that information onto them.
We have seen an awful lot of kids grow up. Families where there's lots of brothers and sisters, 3 or 4 siblings, all come through, and you really get to know the families. And you one after another, you're teaching them, and you're watching them grow. And most of them go to college or trade schools and military, and form a really close bond. And you see them come back after years, and now so many of them have in very important places in the community, teachers and other businesses where they still keep in touch and stop back to say hi, and teaching them is such a big part of the business that it's really make the job a little more rewarding.
The kids that worked here 20 plus years ago now have their own homes, have their own families, and they're coming in saying, yeah, I'm doing this to my house, I'm fixing this in my house, and they don't need to call anyone to do it.
When we opened the store, I remember my dad being proud of me because I could put things together. We sold toys in those days. I would assemble things like that, and he always told everybody, and she can cut glass.
That's an artwork. Now
And make keys.
And cut pipe. And but in the early days, I do remember before there were toy stores that the week leading up to Christmas, we did nothing but build bicycles and wagons and all sorts of things and have them ready for pickup and delivery on Christmas Eve.
Right.
It was a different time in society back then, but it's still a very, very, very fun business, that's for sure. The changes that took place, I have to assume when the store was first opening, a lot of it was just homeowners coming in and
That's right. And
paying cash. And what happened the first time someone asked for credit? Was it something that you and Ed had ever even considered in doing? And,
he had.
Okay.
He had, yes. He was prepared for that,
Yeah.
and knew that it would work, and it did.
And now the going full circle, the business is, where back then it was probably 100% retail. We're lucky if it's 50% retail now and 50% commercial, industrial, and
I want
all
you to
the
talk
big,
about that,
business
Andy.
accounts
When
and
did you
so forth that we
start?
have.
When did you start emphasizing the commercial part of EV Hardware?
When I graduated high school in 1978, had already, of course, worked for you and Mr. Evie now for quite a few years, and I decided at that point that I really wasn't interested in going to college. I just loved what I do, what I did, and what I still do, and that was being at the hardware store and helping people, helping customers, and so forth with it. But back when I graduated in '78, going into '79, when I stayed on as a full-time employee for you and Mr. Evie, that's when the first, I will say, major competition for the hardware store came into Pittsburgh, and that was companies back then. It was Hechinger's and Builder Square, which are both out of business, long since been out of business. And I went to Mr. Evie and I said, it's now that I'm working full-time for you, I want to see if I could change the mix of the clientele of the business to not just be counting on people walking into the store and being a customer, knowing that the competition was going to start getting, more than just
The big box stores were around the corner.
The big box stores who were coming in, and Mr. Evie, sat in his chair, and like he always used to do, he'd take his glasses off, and he'd look at me and say, "Sit down, Andy, and let's talk about this." And he says, "I know you're not going to college. I think you still should go to college, and maybe you should at least take a couple business classes," which at that point he volunteered to pay for them, and I did take a couple business classes at community college just to get an idea as far as the other end of the business. He said to go into the commercial business, it's going to cost money in accounts receivable for the business, and I think it's worth risking, and let's trying it and put together a business plan if you think what we should do, and let's review it and go from there. And we looked at a lot of the local businesses that we already had walking into the store, from churches to other retail businesses to the municipality, the school districts, and we started trying to emphasize some time spending it with them as to what their needs were that they weren't already buying at the store. And it developed into a very nice addition to our business back in the 80s, 81, 82, the early 80s, even when we were into a recession at that time, and the retail business started dropping off some because of the recession. The commercial accounts that we were working with, especially at that time, we picked up a couple big apartment complexes, and it developed into a very nice cash flow of selling them products for the month and sending them a bill, and a couple weeks later getting the check from them. But it developed, and if we move forward even to today's standard, it's more than half of the business is the commercial businesses that we do. So the hardware store part of the business, I look at it as, I don't want to say it's a hobby, because I enjoy it the most. I enjoy the homeowners that come in with their toilet that doesn't flush or their light that doesn't work. But the cash flow part of the business, the major thrust of the business, is all the hospitals and hotels and the buildings in the city and the restaurants, to where the business has changed a lot. Even in the 40 years that I've been there, it's changed an awful lot.
How long did it take for commercial customers to be comfortable with dealing with a
hardware store,
smaller hardware store?
It takes a while. If I look at like a large account that we have is PPG, Pittsburgh Plate Glass, very large company.
It sure is.
They have a nice, beautiful building in the city of Pittsburgh, and we do a lot of business in all the different businesses in the city of Pittsburgh. And I used to, just as I was walking by their building, I would stop by almost every month, and I'd walk in, and the maintenance guy down there, "You again?" I said, "Well, here's my card. I don't want you to forget about me. We're always in town, and whatever you need, we'll deliver," and so forth. And it took almost 5 years of building that relationship to where he called me one day and said, okay, we have a water main break. I need this, this, and this. Can you have it there in an hour? Absolutely. And now, 30 years later, we're still dealing with them and almost on a daily basis. The commercial industrial part of the hardware store started and developed in the early 80s. But what it does for the business now is it's very substantial to the overall health of the hardware store. But with all the buildings in the city of Pittsburgh, all the schools, the hospitals, the churches, the government agencies, and so forth, what they found over the years is even though they're big, they still buy the same things for their buildings that a homeowner buys for their house. It's just a lot larger volume, and generally when they need an item, very quickly. They don't have the luxury of ordering an item and waiting 3-4 days, a week, a month, or whatever it takes. When something breaks in on a commercial property, they want it fixed immediately because they have their tenants, their customers that are looking to get that building back up online, or that hospital, or that apartment complex. And what they found is the bigger the place was that they were buying the merchandise from, the harder it was to get the customer service aspect of it. And that's what I found that we can shine at. We're small enough that we could do whatever it takes to keep the customers happy pretty much instantaneously. So if they call and need something in an hour, we have the wherewithal to get them that in an hour. Or if they just need it the next day, the next morning, whatever the time frame is that they need the product, we have the luxury of doing it. And a lot of times the bigger businesses just can't do the customer service aspect of what the commercial property, the commercial customers want, demand, and need.
Hello, I'm Kim Schreck. I've worked downtown for over 32 years, and we manage a large property in the downtown Pittsburgh area.
Michael Moraska, I'm the Director of Engineering at the Westin Convention Center, Pittsburgh.
I am the Chief Engineer. We have a large staff. We handle all the maintenance and the day's operations of the building.
We buy just about anything I buy. They have. I would call EV Hardware first. I've bought doors. I bought paint. I bought locks. I've bought just about everything from them.
Let me tell you a little bit about EV Hardware. I went all the way back with Mr. EV, who the store is named after. And, there's a lot of big players out there. We've got Grainger, McMaster and Card. About 24 years ago, it was Christmas morning, and we had a real freeze, and I needed a couple dollars worth of plastic fittings. At that time, the gentleman running the store was Andy. I asked him to get up in the middle of the night, Christmas morning, throw some stuff in his truck, come down, make a repair. Other people are not going to do that. That sale was probably worth a whopping $125, if that. And that kind of service to be available for research, purchasing. Everybody wants to sell that thing to you that costs $10,000, but do you want to sell something that costs 10 cents? And EV Hardware, that's where they thrive.
Well, in this business, the advantage I have being in the field, the same field for so many years, is I have the ability to pick out the cream of the crop, as we say, and get rid of the people that don't handle the job very well. So what I've found out in EV Hardware is more of I don't even consider it a hardware. It's more of a we'll do anything type store, and we have anything. But it's a family-oriented business, and they treat you like family. So I like that for number one. Number two, anytime I need something and it's important, I know I can count on them at any time of the day to call them, and I'll have that brought down to me, or them bringing it to me the next day. So that's very important in this business.
There's a lot of specialty things that are very difficult for a building to buy. You have to open up an account, you have to have approval. But if we're looking for a specialty instrumentation, a lot of electronic devices that we need, Andy can take care of that. EV purchase it. It comes right, it's a pass-through right back to us, and that works out really nice for those specialty items.
When you have a company like with this caliber, I mean, there's so many things that they've done for us that are people wouldn't even consider. And I just want to bring up, a couple just to show you that they're not just a regular company. It's not too often when you have the owner of the company load up his car on a Saturday or a Sunday or 7 o'clock on a Tuesday and bring parts down to you that you're desperately in need for. You can't find that anywhere else. And I've even had the owner jump in his car and drive halfway to Erie to pick up a disconnect that I needed at that moment immediately. And you can't find that anywhere.
All the time, the office calls us. We have a lot of managers and people, and they say, Kim, where do you get this? Or why can't we find? I said, call Andy, call Evie. And they always say, oh, yeah, that's right, he can get anything.
Like I mentioned earlier in the interview, it's more family-oriented, so that's the way we're treated. So I take it's like that all through the business.
Great people to work for, good staff, and we've had a great relationship all these years down here at our property.
So it's been fun doing commercial business. It's been fun taking care of the Westin Convention Center, Pittsburgh, or the Grant Building, or any of the other hospitals or hotels, or even dealing with the municipality of Bethel Park, or we do stuff with the federal government, the state agencies, and so forth. They just wanted to be treated properly, and it's been fun working with them, taking care of their hardware needs, whether it's a case of toilet paper to a case of light bulbs to a lawnmower to a can of paint to a part for their toilet. It's really all the same in a home as it is for them, just magnified to the quantity and to the size and so forth of the order. But we're able to take care of those needs, and it's developed into building some very, very nice long-term relationships. And that's a big part of what business is. A business is a relationship that you build with your customers. So whether it's a customer and you're just building a relationship for that individual customer, that individual homeowner, or you're building a relationship with a commercial property mechanic, purchasing agent, the accounting, you're building a relationship because you're selling yourself, and you're selling your needs and what you can and what you can't provide for them, and they become good customers because they trust that you're taking care of them the best way that you can and the best way that they know that they want to be treated. We now have, I took a look at our accounts receivable. We have 600 commercial accounts right now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it's a very large number, and it's what monopolizes an awful lot of my time now. But still, the hardware store part of it, that hobby we say, is still the part that I enjoy the most. Thinking back over all the years from when I started, and the lessons that I learned at the hardware store from Mr. Evie, and I remember the years that I worked with Bruce, because Bruce and I were a year apart in high school, and working with him and unloading truckloads of products. And back in the mid 70s, we would get a truckload of concrete, and everything is hand unloaded, where today we have bobcats and forklifts and machines to do all those. And there were many days that probably one of the funniest ones with Bruce was we got in a tractor trailer load of peat moss, and the peat moss are in the very large bales of peat moss, and there were 3,000 bales on this truck. And Bruce and I were the two that unloaded that truck, and we started early in the morning, like 6 o'clock one morning. This was during the summer, and it took us about 7 hours to unload that. And we started in nice clean clothes, and when we were done, we were black head to toe from peat moss. And it was just one bag at a time, loading and stacking and
that
loading
brings
and stacking.
back a memory. In our very first hardware store, the little one, you had to go outside and down about 5 steps and into a side basement door. And whenever a big truck of something heavy would come, my husband was the only person there to do it. and he would unload those trucks and carry it down the 5 steps. Fortunately, he was young then, but it wasn't easy. In the early days, we didn't have a means of delivery of merchandise. People had to come to us. That certainly has changed. You're all over the place with your truck. Or do you have 2 trucks?
No, we
four.
have 4. We have 4 delivery vehicles now, from big dump trucks to smaller trucks to vans.
And of course the rentals of all the heavy equipment that you do, that wasn't even dreamed of back in the early days.
We got into the rental equipment 7 years ago, I think, and now we have over $1 million worth of rental equipment that we own and rent out, from parties, graduation parties, the party tents and tables and chairs, to the big machinery, the big bobcats and the drain cleaning,
including the people to put up the tents and assist in that way.
Yeah, we currently 36. We currently have 36 employees at the store right now. So and we need them all. We need them all, absolutely. And it started with just you and Ed. So from 2 to 36, that's pretty good. That's good growth.
Well, speaking of the 2 of us, my husband never wanted the image of a mom and pop store.
Okay.
So I knew that I wasn't going to be there long term, which was okay with me. Yeah. I had some volunteer things I wanted to do, and I wanted to be a mom. I think he made the right decision in not creating the image of a mom and pop store. But I'm glad that I could help, and it helped me to understand what his day was like, the kinds of challenges he had to meet pretty much by himself in those early days. But he was up to it.
Yes, he was. And it's been a great journey that he had with it, and it'll continue. We've now 60 years. We just celebrated in November our 60th anniversary of being in business. So we'll see where we are in another 20 years. And all 3 of my children have worked for us.
Right.
And they said they wouldn't give that up for anything. I had my 3 children all through high school and all through their college, and they've moved on now. Jamie now is with the federal government in Washington, D.C., and in the Justice Department, and Catherine is with Nestle's in St. Louis, and Robbie is graduating this year from Ohio State with a zoology degree. But I think they learned a lot being at the hardware store. They all know how to take care of themselves, take care of their houses or apartments, and they found the career choices that they want. But one of the real heartwarming things is they are very much involved in their communities through their churches or their volunteering or their different programs or what they do. And that's what Mr. Evie instilled on me, and that's what I passed on to them. So it all just continues to flow through the hardware store.
That's wonderful.
The comment, like the Evie University, I would say over the years we've easily passed 1,000 employees that we have put through there over even the 40 years that I've been there. And when we had our 60th anniversary, I had hundreds of them send messages. Some of them sent big bouquets of flowers, but even through the social media, they would send messages of, Andy, I don't know if you remember who I am or who I was, or when we worked, and this is what I learned at Evie Hardware, and this is what we still do.
That's very gratifying.
And it is. It is a very gratifying to see that they still remember, and we have people in ex-employees that are in politics and medical and education. We seem to have a lot in the education fields, a lot of them engineers, a lot of them through the military. One of them is a colonel in the Air Force. We have a couple captains in the Navy. We have doctors. It's a whole complete world of employees that we have, and where they are in their life, but all came out of the Evie University. So
that's great.
That's what you and Ed started.
Mr. Evie was a mentor as he trained Andrew to be a mentor. It's very difficult. Ed and I Ed and I one day I had an issue with a customer, and the customer was really just raking me over the coals, and I was trying to be. I was still young in business, and I was not as flexible as I have become. And I sat down with Ed, and Ed gave me both sides of the story, not the positive, but the negative. He gave me both sides of the story. And at the end of leaving there, after about 20 minutes with Ed, I had resolved the problem, went back to the customer, gave the customer 2 solutions, and the customer picked one, and it was good from then. And Ed has, when he was there, he was just the best, and he trained Andrew to be the same way. And Andrew's the same way. He's a very good sounding board for me and a good mentor for me.
What about your association with True Value? How do you think that has helped the business?
I think it's helped a lot. I remember in the early years, the hardware store had a relationship with Belknap, with Anchor, George Worthington.
There was a local association.
Action Industries,
Yes,
Associated
yes,
Hardware Store,
yes.
Action Industry. That's where the first of the Dollarama products, and we would get tractor trailer loads of plastics.
Right.
And that's where I remember it starting, and I believe it was right around 1980 is when Mr. Evie made the decision to go with True Value. I guess Associated Hardware at that time was having their own financial problems, and he was having issues getting products in a timely manner. And I know I was not part of that decision in switching to True Value, but I remember when the first rep came in from True Value to introduce himself, and it took about a month to switch the store over to the new ordering systems and the new products. And so we've been with True Value since, I'm going to say, right around 1980. So we have quite a few years of being a True Value hardware store. And True Value is an international company. They're not just a regional company. There's, I believe, about 8,000 True Value stores worldwide. And it's opened up us to a whole depth of inventory that we had never had before.
It's also kind of developed into you personally being a spokesperson for True Value.
That is very true.
In the media?
In the media
and
with it.
Other ways.
Now, we started a True Value Home Improvement show on KDK Radio. I've been on the radio now. This is my 22nd year of doing the radio programs for them, and that's a call-in show every Saturday on KDK AM 1020, and it's at 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've heard it.
That relationship started by me running into the general manager and one of the on-air personalities at a home show. I was doing some home shows just for ourselves in Pittsburgh and Monroeville, and ran into them, and they asked me to start doing a show on Saturdays for them, and it's developed into a nice program. I really enjoy doing it. I know we have a couple million listeners, and it's on Saturdays, but once again, I look at it as people ask me all the time, how do you prepare for that show? And to me, there's nothing to prepare for.
Well, you've done this most of your life, Andy.
It's the same questions I get at the store.
Right.
I have a raccoon in the chimney, or I have a toilet that doesn't flush, or I have a driveway that's broken, or what do you know about the new LED light bulbs, or whatever the question is. It's the questions that we get on a daily basis, whether by people coming in or whether people calling on the phone, or now I get emails and Facebook questions, and as the media changes, we try and change with it. And then an offshoot from the radio show, I believe this is my 6th year on KDK TV on Channel 2. Years ago, down at Gateway Center, KDK TV is on the first floor, and KDK Radio was on the second floor down at Gateway Center. And one Saturday, this young lady, I'm at the radio show, and actually in the middle of my live broadcast, a young lady came into the studio and just sat down and started listening. And I didn't know who she was, but I'm a guest of the station, and so I'm like, fine. Rob Pratt, who I do the shows with, seemed to know who the young lady was. So as we finished the show, she got up and introduced herself. Her name is Jill Neely. And she goes, I produce a TV program called Pittsburgh Today Live. I'm like, oh, how nice. And she goes, do you ever see it? I'm like, no, I don't watch TV, which I really don't. And she goes, well, it's on in the mornings. You're probably at work, but we do a more or less like a Pittsburgh Magazine type of show of just all things that are happening in Pittsburgh on a daily basis. We have the program live every day, Monday through Friday. Would you consider doing a segment on Thursday mornings for us? I'm like, okay, sure.
And that's how you got the nickname Handy Andy.
That's where they started the Handy Andy nickname down there at KDK, and then we continue with that, doing the shows with BPTV and Dave Cable and so forth. As we try and do an offshoot from what we do for KDKA and doing, monthly spots that we show on BPTV and also on YouTube videos and everything we produce with it. But it's taken the store into it's a new level of media and promotions and keeping the name out to the both the average homeowner, but we have actually I have a lot of our commercial customers that comment on both the YouTube videos we do, the videos that Dave produces, and the TV segments and the radio stations. We have like the staff at the Byham every Saturday. We do a lot of business with the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, and the guys down at the Byham Theater say on Saturdays they take a break at 10 o'clock and they sit there in their maintenance room and they listen to the radio show and then go back to work afterwards, which is fun. Or I have the purchasing department at the Weston Convention Center. On Thursdays during a TV show, they stop working and they watch the show, which it's comical to me, but it's humbling to me also.
Absolutely, that's very
that the
nice.
people would take the time to watch it. But it's fun producing the shows. It's fun doing the activities and so forth.
We've got everything ready. Andy Amrine, EV True Value Hardware in Bethel Park, regular PTL contributor. We appreciate it, buddy. Happy holiday. Yep.
I have a couple pictures that I brought that you might be interested in. This was in later years, of course, but these are both pictures that we had taken for our church, Christ United Methodist Church directory. That one of the two of us, and this one of Ed in his later years. Unfortunately, he has been gone now 20 years.
Yeah. It was what, May 1st, 1995?
That's correct.
There you go.
Good memory. And anyway,
he was my teacher.
Well, he was my beloved, and I miss him terribly,
Yeah.
even still.
No, I remember one time we had a conversation, and this was back in the mid '80s, and I made a mistake, and so I went to Ed and I says, I did this. I know this didn't work out, and he just put this little grin on his face and sat back in his chair. And I went back when I told him a mistake. I don't even remember what the mistake was anymore. And I thought, well, I got to own up to it. I made the mistake, and I'm going to tell Mr. Evie about it and take my punishment for whatever it was. And he says, Andy, let me tell you something. He goes, you may have not gone to college, but college would have cost you $50,000, but you made a few mistakes, and I look like I paid for your college, so maybe not by going to school, but by making these mistakes, but I let you make the mistakes, because he goes, that's the best way to learn. I could tell you all day long, don't do this, don't do this, do this, do this, but until you do it and you make the mistakes and you learn from the mistakes and so forth, that's what's going to make you a better businessman. And I never forgot that. It stuck with me, and it's part of in teaching the employees or the staff that we have. And sometimes I know they're making a mistake, and I still let them make the mistake because of what Mr. Evie taught me of how you have to make mistakes to learn from them. And that's one of the many, many times and conversations or little things that he would say or do that I'll never forget.
There was another side to him that a lot of people didn't know about. He did a lot to help people who were down on their luck. He got no publicity out of that. He knew he wouldn't have accepted it. But around the holidays and other times of the year, he was very involved in helping people. And you have carried that tradition on, Andy.
Thank you.
And you are very involved in the community, maybe more so than he was. He ran charity golf outings. He was involved with the Chamber of Commerce
He
in
was
Bethel
president
Park.
for quite a
yes.
few years.
And
I
that's
remember the golf outing that he would run for one of your organizations you started was Prime Time Adult Daycare Center at
right.
Christ United Methodist.
And it was his idea. We needed money, and he said, let's run a charity golf outing.
Yeah.
And he organized it. He emceed it. He was very good at that.
Yes, he was.
And
He was a very good public speaker.
And we did raise some money and had some people coming back the next year.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the education process that I feel that Mr. Evie did instill in me is the community involvement. I look at the business, the hardware store, cannot survive without the community.
That's right.
So the more that I help the community, the more that the community helps us in the business. So we try and, be part of the community and help, and whether it's with the Bethel Park Community Foundation or with Christ United Methodist Church or my church with St. Joan of Arc, and we try and be involved as much as we can with it because it allows us to sleep at night.
Well, and I think Ed is looking down and smiling while all
Every
those
so often
things.
I feel a tap on the back of the head too, especially early in the morning. I still I enjoy going to work early. I get to work usually, by about 4 o'clock in the morning is when I generally get there, and so I'll spend a couple hours at the store before the rest of my staff starts coming in at 6. And so I'll have conversations with Mr. Evie there at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, and every so often I'll feel a slap on the back of the head and say, "Don't do that." But it's very, very fond memories of my whole childhood growing up and being part of the store, and I like the tradition of the hardware store, and I always like reminiscing and hearing the stories of the early years, how you got started, and so forth with it. It's always fun.
Well, I think it's in very good hands.
Well, thank you. Pat, I want to thank you for spending this time with us. It's always fun going down memory lane.
Indeed.
My best to Jill and Bruce when you talk to them.
Thank you.
They're a major part of who we are too, just like the years I spent with Ed and the history of the store and so forth. And thank you for the fond memories and the time.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure. And it's also my pleasure to be living in a beautiful retirement home called Providence Point, which gave us the setting for this
it really is.
interview.
No, it's a nice facility. You should be very comfortable.
I love living here.
Good.
I started with Mr. Evie. Andy took over, and it hasn't missed a beat. I said I enjoy working with him. He's one of my best friends, and I do enjoy coming to work every day.
I've had a very great experience. I started here, I was going to college and didn't like a desk job, and I found a very good place here with a bunch of people that are great to work with and a wonderful owner.
People say to me, "You think Andy walks on water?" I said, "He does."
Hope you've enjoyed learning about Evie True Value Hardware, the 60-some years we've been in business, the history of the store, getting to meet Pat Evie, some of the staff, some of the customers, learning what makes us a unique place to shop and a destination shop for Bethel Park. We enjoy being part of the community. The community is what makes us who we are. We just absolutely love being here, and hopefully you've enjoyed this segment on it. So thank you for watching BPTV, and hope to see you again soon with our next segment.